It's a totally different market. You're dealing with very different characters. The dress code's different, conversation's different, the way that you communicate with clients.
Our clients are all very bright, but I think what we've all agreed upon is if we can communicate as fully as possible with our client and allow them to come on the journey with us.
Most valuable thing for me is to have as much perspective on other people's lives, other people's cultures, to try and be more open-minded to how other people work.
Welcome to the latest episode of our podcast, Navigating, with me, Bertie Russell. I am very excited to welcome this guest to the podcast today. Today we have Hermione, my sister. As you may or may not know, I'm one of 6 kids. Hermione, unfortunately for her, has 5 brothers, which has formed a very strong, powerful lady. And welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Pleasure. You have just celebrated 10 years with Russell Simpson, which is quite a milestone. And it's quite funny interviewing family members. And as we've both watched back the interview with Dad, a lot of people have given us feedback that it's lovely to have that on as a record, having those conversations. And I'm really pleased that we're able to do this today. I'd love to hear from you, firstly, your take on, what your 10 years has been like, how it's been for you. So tell us about it.
Yeah, absolutely. Firstly, it's incredible to think 10 years has gone by. Looking back, it's actually, the company's evolved massively. And I think when we all started, we were all at very different stages of our lives. And
What were you? I can't remember. What was your first job when you came in?
I came in as a negotiator, really wanted to go into interior architecture. Whilst I was looking for a job, I started helping out at Russell Simpson, and I never left.
That's happened to a few of us, I think.
I think it's happened to a lot of us. It was never something that I'd set out or thought would be my career path. I've worked in a couple of different places, and it's been interesting being somewhere where, I think we've got a great leader to look up to, our father. We've been able to try and test different parts of the industry whilst getting to know more about what our dad's done. I think that's been probably one of the biggest things for me working at Russell Simpson, hearing the stories from everyone in the industry. It's quite remarkable to see him from a different perspective.
It's funny saying that's my greatest memory of starting. It's, but when you grow up, you have a certain idea of who your parents are, and not many people get the opportunity to then go and see them from a completely different light. And day one, you meet clients and other peers in the industry, and they've all had such lovely things to say about Dad.
I think we're so lucky to have him as such a great supporter. He's not a sort of helicopter boss that watches over us too closely. And you and some of the other boys have been at Russell Simpson for longer than I have, so probably felt more advanced in understanding the industry, and took more of a lead on certain areas of growth in the business. But as we've all matured as, in our careers and as people, it feels like the company's grown very nicely, sort of in a really organic way. Yeah. There's no exact formula in how it works best. And the fact that we've had to go through and make all these changes and adapt is one of the things that I've really loved most about being at Russell Simpson. A lot of people probably go into industries and they've got a very prescripted job title, and ours was actually, constantly evolving.
And we were just doing a bit of everything, weren't we?
Yeah. Just before we headed into COVID, you went to open up the office in Kensington.
Kensington.
It was really fascinating being a part of that. I think the biggest contrast was coming from an office that was very well established, and all of our clients. I mean, there is one of the reasons we did move up to Notting Hill, Kensington, is because quite a lot of the buyers in the market does spill over. Yeah. So it felt like the obvious geographical place to open a second office. But realistically, it's a totally different market. You're dealing with very different characters in terms of agents, search agents, buyers, sellers.
What is that difference?
It's a lot more relaxed, I feel. I felt that there's a lot of people, a lot more international buyers, Americans, people making their money in more tech industries, feels more creative. And because of that, the dress code's different, the conversation's different, the way that you communicate with clients is less formal.
Yeah, that's interesting.
I loved that aspect of it. I loved the contrast. And
even now, even I was speaking to Leo last night, the dress code is different. You know, if you're in Chelsea or Belgravia, you are dressing differently.
I think even the way that you know how to approach clients and whether they need a paper letter followed up in the post. You know, if you started sending paper letters or in some cases formal emails to a 40-year-old tech successor, they wonder what you're doing. They want they want you to be possibly more direct, or even, you know, there are some people that, you know, want you to come and sit down and have a coffee with them.
Yeah.
I mean, one of the things I love the most about the industry is being able to engage with different types of people. And so for me, that was a very interesting aspect. But also being part of the company, but in a very different guise. You could walk into any house or flat and go into a pitch in Chelsea, and more often than not, you've been recommended or they've dealt with you in the past, or they know who you are. But suddenly coming in on the back foot and not really having as much of a presence, it really surprised me. It felt more like an uphill struggle than, you know, already being one of the favourites by the time that you've walked into someone's
different
front door in Chelsea. And I love that challenge.
I remember that so Leo had been the head of the department in Chelsea that you were working within, and then you came up to be the head of the department in Kensington, Notting Hill. And I think I underestimated how much of a change that would be for you, for running a department, number one, being fully responsible for all the client, speaking to our clients, winning the business, as well as being a new area, new clothes, new communication. And for me, I definitely had a moment of realization where I underestimated how big that move was for you. I was like, oh, money's coming, she'll just figure it out. And I suppose that's one of the things with family that you do underestimate, or I don't know, I probably underestimate that requirement to be sensitive to it. So I'm like, come on, we're in the trenches, let's just go.
Yeah.
And I remember you being like, this is quite full on, I've had Leo there to support me. And
well, I think that was it, is realistically, you know, I'd spoken with clients, but I hadn't had to make those difficult phone calls.
Yeah. Those calls are horrible to make. I mean, to call your client and tell them that, you know, you've tried your best and you thought the price was right, but we've got to change the price, or, you know, we've had a buyer on the hook for 3 months and they've just pulled out and gone and bought something else, or those conversations are really horrible and not nice. And I remember all of your first conversations like that, because you would be like, oh, I've got to make this call. And you know, none of us like making those calls, but I suppose you just become more hardened to it. And
well, I don't know what you think, but whenever I have to make these calls, I feel like I'm breaking up with someone, and it's my choice to break up with them. But realistically, we are just, you know, in the front line, and we are the messenger. which was a big learning curve for me to, to make your client feel and trust and believe that you are on their team doing the best that you can. And it's not, I would take all of this so personally, and having to be the person to, tell them that the deal's fallen apart.
Yeah.
But yeah, the experience that you have every time in making these difficult calls and dealing with different people and trying to understand how different people like to be dealt with, and you only grow and understand, these forms of communication better.
Yeah.
And it's such a great skill to then, use in other parts of your life. And
I think the biggest thing that I think we've all learned, and this is all, none of us have had this sort of formal training or worked at a corporate where there might have been some formal training, but the communication with, as you said, that building that trust and relationship is so important. And it's not an exact science what we're doing. So, actually our clients are all very bright, very savvy people. And I think what we've, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what we've all agreed upon is if we can communicate as fully as possible with our client and allow them to come on the journey with us, full feedback on viewings and really honest feedback about price or about condition or about all of the little things that maybe at the beginning we were nervous of upsetting our clients' feelings.
I find it fascinating speaking to the different negotiators and hearing, or even just, hearing from you guys what's going on.
Yeah.
Because what you're saying probably feels very obvious because it's your everyday, but actually from the outside, it's really interesting. And I think what a lot of agents forget is the client is busy doing their own life. They've employed you because you're the expert, you've got your finger on the pulse in the market. And to be able to clearly communicate what's going on is what I think a lot of estate agents fail to do.
You do get into a rhythm and a habit, and you quickly forget that all of the stuff that and is obvious to you and all the things that you're doing, the owner of that property or the landlord of that property doesn't know that unless you tell them.
Yeah.
And if you tell them it all, they're going to understand it. It's all very common sense.
Yeah.
Before we get into a bit more of that, and actually the part of this this chat that I've been most excited about is to talk about your sabbatical. And for anyone that doesn't know, you've been on your sabbatical now. So thank you for being. We caught you while you were in London for a week, but you left in February, and you always said that you'd be away for about a year. I always said to you, if you're going to leave, that's fine. Like, you do what you want to do, and we obviously don't want you to leave. But I'm excited that you are going to be coming back. Would love to hear more about why you wanted to go, what you've learned while you've been away, what you've been doing. I mean, for anyone that, for everyone watching this might feel like, or listening, might feel like we chat every single day at work, and with all the others every single day we're speaking for 20 minutes, half an hour. Whereas I've only really spoken to you and seen you
briefly
a few times since February, so the last sort of 7-8 months. So what have you been doing?
Well, setting up the Kensington office was great fun. There were definitely times where we were in the trenches and maybe understaffed in certain areas, or transferring some of our systems and procedures over. And I felt like there was a few years of not having a life, which is very much in my nature to get too stuck into things.
Yeah.
I don't know. I just felt like I needed a bit of perspective. I needed to give myself my own time out of this. I was listening to Tim's podcast, and what he said is everybody's got a very different version of balance.
Yeah.
And I'm quite a all or nothing, or probably just an all person. And I think I've definitely realised this in this time that I've had off, is I find it very difficult to not be doing.
I mean, till the last day, there was like, you were so on it. And I remember with Hattie, we were like, Hermione, you're leaving like tomorrow. You've got to let go. Like, you've got to go traveling.
Yeah.
And you are. I mean, I've done a lot of thinking and reflecting on balance, and I think that's what's probably led me to the podcast. Like, I've had so many interesting conversations with people outside of this about balance, and wanting to find success at work, but also success in life isn't just making money and work. It's also about family life and personal life and own health and all that type of stuff. And for me, there's one of the things that I learned was a bit like what Tim said, is there's a stress curve, and it goes from 0 to 10, and you're either incredibly bored or you're completely overwhelmed. And we all are different, and we all like a different quantity of stress.
Yeah.
And I reckon I'm probably a 7.5 out of 10, and you're about 10.
Yeah. Well, I remember
not stress,
one of the things of this year is, life is so planned, and this year I haven't made a plan, which has definitely felt like the wheels are about to come off quite a lot of the time. But actually, all in all, it's been amazing, because it's meant that I've been able to sort of navigate my way round my plans judged on what I want to do at that time, or actually being able to think with my head as opposed to letting my diary dictate what I'm doing, where I'm going. Other opportunities open themselves up.
That's true.
And also, I mean, traveling alone, you're never really alone, but it's incredible. You find yourself in situations that you would never have done if you're with someone else. And the people that I've met, and I think it's really like the most valuable thing for me is to have as much perspective on other people's lives, other people's cultures, how other people do things, and to try and be more open-minded to how other people work.
And not business work, but just work in general, right?
Yeah, just how they operate, and going into sharing a room with 4 people in their early 20s and having a very different way of operating. I mean, in one of the places, you work from 8 a.m. till 12, and then you help out in the evenings. It was a yoga retreat. It's a farm, and you do all various different types of things, from cooking, clearing up. And I arrived, and it was a complete bomb site. And everyone was just walking around like this was normal. When I spoke to Mum about it, she was like, well, I don't think you're very normal, so I think you need to... So your normal might be different to other people's. So I was like, okay, I need to...
Yeah, our normal, for anyone who doesn't know, our normal on sort of OCD cleanliness and order is not normal for anyone.
No. And I spent the first 5 days working from 8 a.m. till 9 p.m. And I cleaned the entire place, organised everything, and I loved the people that I was working with on that farm. And I ended up, when I left, the guy cried. And I don't know, it was so touching.
Because his house had never been cleaner.
Well, I think also a lot of the volunteers, it's very nice going into a place where nobody knows anything about you, and you're judged on
your
how
actions.
You respond to situations. Yeah. And
I think that is something so interesting for us in particular. Like, someone said to me a while back that, for most people, when you go to a new school, or you go to a university, or you go to a new job, you have the opportunity to slightly reinvent yourself, and that's a natural thing that everyone does. So, if you've been at a job for 3 years and you go to a new job where no one knows you, you can reconsider who you are. You can think about all the things you like about yourself, and you can think about the things that maybe you've been given feedback on or the route you want to take, and you can slightly reinvent yourself at your new job or your new university or whatever it is. And for us, and I mean, in my sake, I've been at schools with all of my siblings my entire life, been at university with my siblings or friends. I've then been out of work with my dad and then all my siblings. And so you actually you don't have an opportunity to reinvent yourself, and your identity is sort of caught up in a sort of family, family expectation.
Well, it's sort of put on you.
It's kind of put on you. And I think, we've grown up with this crazy work ethic, and I think we're all very active and we like to keep busy. And I think for me, the year away was great. Like you're saying, like it was great at, meeting new people and trying to be, I different hostels I went to, I was like, oh, I'm going to be this person, or I'm going to be like really outgoing, or I'm going to try and be funny, which, never works. And that was a really great learning experience for me. And I think stress is it's got this bad rep, but, everyone needs a bit of positive stress. I like a 7.5 to 8, but if I get to 6, I'm bored and I'm sort of like, what should I do? Do you think, and I only managed to come back with that perspective, having had an opportunity to be out of family, out of work. Do you think that, I wondered whether you'd go away and understand that you perhaps are more of an 8 than a 10. But I think you probably are a 10. What do you think? Do you think that's so innate that you...
I had this image of me sitting on a beach, sipping coconuts, reading books.
That's laughable.
And I put so much pressure on myself. I actually remember speaking to someone who was saying, well, what would you like to do? And I was like, well, I love hiking, so maybe I can become a hiking instructor. And everything I said, it was like a professional version of that activity.
Yeah, you're going to be traveling into an expert professional.
Yeah, this person was like, you can go hiking and just enjoy it. You don't need to go and
time it and get your heart
constantly be kind of trying to break records. And so, I'm learning that in myself, that, well, one, I put a lot of pressure on myself, and two, I am built, needing stress and pressure and goals, and without it actually stresses me out more, not having
that intensity.
Yeah.
Do you think you coming back, and you've realised you want to come back to Russell Simpson, and we'll talk a little bit about what you're going to do, which could potentially add more stress. Do you think that you'll be able to, or do you think you have a desire to find a better balance?
Well, I think that putting your own self as the number one priority then means that you can perform better at work. Yeah. I can see it. And and it's actually been great. I've spent quite a lot of time with people that work remotely, and most people that work remotely are putting themselves first. Their passion is surfing, so they're weaving that in, and then also managing to get their work done. And a lot of Americans have a very different mentality towards all of this, and it's been very interesting seeing the productivity levels
of different
sort of cultures. And
so
can
academically you understand it, but
academically I
physically
understand
you
it.
Feel guilty that you're taking 20 minutes to have lunch.
Yeah,
that's what I feel.
But equally, I think in coming back, I need really to make more of a concerted effort to have, my own hobbies, my own personal time coming as priority. I think our job, the trouble is that you're never done. There are some people that leave their desk or can leave a half day on a Friday because they're finished with work. We're never finished with work. There's always more to do. And I think it's trying to learn to rein that in and find that balance to stop me from getting to this stage again.
And if your goal is to be that great person at work and, you know, productive and all of that stuff, you need to force yourself in. Well, I need to force myself into allowing myself some time off or some time to think or some time to regenerate.
Yeah.
And it's tough, because I also think there's
a lot of guilt.
There's a lot of guilt, and I think that's, you know, that's a little bit about, you know, we all have that as a sort of family, and we all want to work our hardest, but there's also societal kind of pressures that you should be at, you know, this is 5 a.m. club, and which I don't know enough about, but for me, I need to get some sleep. So you're coming back at the beginning of next year ish, I think. So before we get onto what you're doing, I put up a post on LinkedIn about 3 or 4 months ago saying that we were starting to talk to people about opening up an office in Mayfair and Marylebone, and you obviously knew about that because you're on the sort of directors WhatsApp group and been involved in this. But you took a screenshot of it and sent it to me and said, "Can I be considered for this role?" Which I thought was awesome. And I suppose that's, you know, again, like when you're out of it, you see things from a different perspective. And yeah, so tell us what you're going to be doing, if you know. I know it's not all completely confirmed. Or the idea.
Well, the idea is to open another office, and that being in Mayfair. And I'll hopefully be coming in under somebody who'll be heading up the office and more experience in the area.
Yeah.
And helping do what we did in Kensington and Notting Hill again. Again, there'll be, I'm sure, lots of different things to learn, different challenges, but at least this time it's going to be in a very different way, with the company having progressed so much further, having in-house marketing, photographers, you being in a seat where you can oversee and be more actively involved in the growth of the business. Yeah. And I'm really excited about it.
I suppose, does it feel like it's going to be a sort of similar-ish thing to what you did before?
I'm a lot more excited knowing that I can do it.
Yeah. If, let's say, you know, another sibling was to come into the business, or some of our kids were going to come into the business, and you had the hindsight that you have now and the experience you have now, do you think it was good to have different experiences before working at Russell Simpson, and to go away and get the perspective that you're having?
I think for me, what I found I felt like working for other people, I slightly was handicapped, because I like working hard, and I like, when I'm given a task, doing the absolute best that I can do. And when you're working in a bigger company and you're just a number, not being appreciated or given the confidence to go off and have initiative, I found quite frustrating. But I think having other experiences, I think traveling and realizing, is very important. I think one of why my big realizations this year is the world is quite a big place, and there are times where I'd be running around like a headless chicken, not getting any sleep, and thinking the world was going to end if I
didn't get that report out.
Exactly. And my stress levels were, because I wanted everything to be perfect, I put a huge amount of pressure on myself, and taking time out and realising that the world is slightly bigger than houses being sold in the borough of Kensington and Chelsea.
Yeah.
is actually quite a valuable experience for me.
And all of the great people that work with us now a lot of them have come from other places and brought different influences and experiences, and those have been really valuable. Well, we're very excited for you to come back. very happy that you've done what you've done, what you're doing now. I remember when you came to me and told me, I think you were quite nervous about, I mean, I was terrified about telling people when I was going to go away. And I think it's, you know, for me, it was the best thing I know on my deathbed, it will be the best thing I've ever done, going traveling, and the perspective and the different cultures and the time to think, it's just incredible. So I hope that continues to be brilliant, and you use that, you know, as much as you can to fill your regenerative cup up. But yeah, thank you so much for coming here and having a chat and
thanks, Bert.
Sharing all your
I hate to say it, but I do miss work a lot. So I'll be excited to come back, but I'm going to go and try and sit on a beach before then.
Twiddling your thumbs on the beach, ready to come back.
Yeah, exactly.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Thank you. Cool.